Simply put, why is insurance a great place to work specifically for data talent?
I think insurance is a great place to work because of the rich data environment insurance sits in. Insurance is data, right? Without the data points, you wouldn't effectively be able to look at writing risks and managing the claims process associated with these policies that are generated. And I think that is quite unique in the world. It looks at so many different types of data that gives a real richness to the industry. And the work then that's done, in the whole insurance market is something that's, as I say, quite impactful. It allows projects to effectively take place, right? So you're in a position where, and in my experience for the market, underwriting things that ideas and things that people have imagined in industries that have come into being, and there's a rich history of that, right? And especially in this day and age, when you start thinking about in terms of space particularly, right? And I'm lucky enough to be a part of a market that was part of the first satellite that we ever got insured, right? And there's that innovation around it, and then moving into kind of like cyber renewables. These things would not have come about in terms of being able to be insured without that rich data.
You may have already covered it, I suppose, in that answer, but I'm curious to get your opinion on where you see some of the biggest opportunities for more effective data utilization.
Well, I think I've probably touched on that, but I guess we're seeing some quite crazy weather, aren't we, at the moment, I suppose? And as we ever do, I think everyone talks about this, being British myself, talk about the weather all the time, but this is something that seems to be ever changing, right? And with climate change and ensuring projects that are impacted by climate change, and that is multiple different lines, right? From properties where they sit in relation to flooding or fire risk, whether it's renewables in the Caribbean, that wind farms are going to be more subject to the hurricane seasons, and these events are becoming more and more frequent, and I think the data opportunity is to provide more certainty in that uncertain world that we seem to be more in. Colleagues of mine in different areas will, and across my experience in other companies, will look at 1 in 100, 1 in 200 events. We're seeing that kind of become 1 in 30, 1 in 50, and I think the opportunity really is to create that certainty and that confidence that can actually allow businesses to build infrastructures, actually help with the climate problem by understanding that certainty more.
So I'm just curious to know if there was on reflection a pivotal moment in your career journey that you felt had a significant impact ultimately on where you are today and the work that you're now doing.
Well, I don't think there's probably one. I think it's probably a couple. I think the first one was probably, I was lucky enough, and if people look at my career history, I was lucky enough to be taken on at Nationwide Building Society in their graduate scheme. Well, actually, it wasn't a graduate scheme. It was a technology trainee scheme. And they taught me the basics, taught me how to code, systems, design, requirements, things like that. And I'll be honest, people learn some foundational skills that kind of stick with them. And I think it's really important people learn them as part of what they do. You can learn them online now a lot easier than you could, right? And through other partners to learn these things. But they really gave me a good grounding in data and IT. And things have evolved massively from when I started, but there's still some elements that I always fall back on, right? My coding's not great anymore, but I understand it, and we can have those conversations. So that was one of the pivotal moments there. And I think another significant moment probably was where I decided I'd start my own business, actually. And I started that completely separate from data or IT or anything like that. It was actually setting up a company to sell smoothies. Right, I was going to be the new innocent smoothie guy. That taught me a lot of business skills, but also taught me how to fail. So I failed in that. I think people need to be comfortable with failure, and I think there's no better experience than going through that process, because what it did is it made me, well, it did two things for me. It taught me you can recover from failure, and there's lessons to be learned. And it doesn't matter kind of what you do in I suppose it's more of like a corporate setting or other settings. As long as you don't break the bank, as long as you don't bankrupt the company, as long as you don't create a huge breach, right, in data, you can actually do some really, really good things. And the only person that's stopping you doing them usually is you. And so you can actually take some risks, fail fast, and learn from that. I learned that. The second thing was it really kind of spurred me on. I was like, I've lost some time here. I need to move forward in my career, and it kind of gave me more motivation to push forward. So it's the two pivotal moments, I think.
Last question, really. I mean, again, you may have covered it a little bit, but it's really just about how you've historically approached challenges and setbacks in your professional life. If you have a go-to strategy, I would also love to hear that as well. If you do have one.
Do you know what? I think it's sometimes just taking a breath. So if there's a setback, I think sometimes you kind of want to. I'm the sort of person that kind of wants to come up with a solution, fix a problem, move forward, right? I think sometimes though, sometimes you just need to take a breath and actually think about what's happened, look at yourself, look at your skills, and think about what a route through that would be, and then stick with it and not be disheartened. So I guess, look, I think there's no worse critic than yourself, actually. I don't think. It's kind of the way that I've always learned as well, and it's probably part of my upbringing, but it's kind of like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? How can I do something different? But also, certain things will happen beyond your control, and you can only control what you can actually control and nothing else. And this is kind of like, I think when I see people struggling with their career development or trying to understand why something hasn't happened the way they wanted it to, usually the things that have gone against them is probably things that have been beyond their control. And I think it's just accepting that and trying to deal with that situation and not try and engineer things that aren't there. And so it's kind of like sitting back, reflecting, taking stock, and just moving forward. As long as you feel like you're learning something, I think that's the main thing. If you don't feel like you're learning something, then I guess that's a different issue and a problem. But I guess that's how I deal with setbacks. I just keep going, right?